the fact that, and I think I made a reference that this is very close to how, for instance, let's say a politician would talk. So everything about what he says is, in Rumi's words, hello, Rasul, how are you? Happy New Year. He said, I've spread feast. So that's what he tells you. He said, I've spread a feast. Come, everyone, for I'm God's deputy, the Khalifa's son. Hey, simple-hearted people everywhere. Come fill your stomachs here with my hot air. Some waited years for promises he made. Tomorrow never comes, and dreams must fade. And this is basically what it is. It is that it's like one of those things that, again, it goes back into having that vision and developing that a way of judging words and people's demeanor, so that you can properly gauge whether somebody is coming from the heart and giving us that truthful and the heartfelt message, or are they basically just talking from hot air and just reciting certain things. Before that, I think the stories that we went through, which another one that you also we talked about was the two angels that they make a prayer every day, which their prayers is that, hey, oh God, those who are generous, give them more, and those who are not generous, just basically give them hell, or something in that sense, and so forth. And these all resulted from the very old story of the harpist, which basically gave us an insight into the fact that you, first of all, can always create that unique connection with God, and that unique connection is something that you can then request or want, or perhaps put yourself in a position of content and trust that what you are asking for and what you want is something that is heard, and the Almighty will always respond. And that is again, it's a message that Rumi reiterates after, over and over and over again. So, and now he starts a new story, and this story is about a Bedouin who is poor. And the story is in form of a conversation between the wife and the husband. And the conversation is actually very surreal. It's as if, it was happening nowadays between a wife and a husband that, is going through financial struggles or something in that sort. And we read the first part of it, I think. In this case, the wife was the one who was complaining. And if you remember, one of the things that the wife said was that, hey, you are so poor. And one of the things that she said is that, and if a guest should ever come our way while he's asleep, I'll take his coat away. I mean, I would basically rob him. We are that poor, and I'm that desperate at the moment. So the Bedouin now answers back. So the Bedouin tells his wife to be patient and explains the virtue of poverty and patience. Now, poverty in here is actually the wrong translation again. The word itself is poverty in Farsi, which is faqr. It comes from, poverty and, basically poor. But in a spiritual sense, faqr comes at the very last stage of spirituality. And the other meaning that faqr has is or poverty. So poverty is not the right is not the right translation for it. So the faqr that he's talking about in here is, it comes from the fact that you don't need anything. It's needness. You don't have any need within yourself. You are completely content with what comes your way and what you presently have. And basically everything for you is something that's God given. So you look at it from perspective of whatever he gives, he also can take, and you're completely content with it. You are flowing with the universe. You are not in any shape or form, trying to perhaps, let's say, abandon, your God's, faith, the faith that you have in God. You're basically, everything for you is happening as if the world was completely programmed and rigged your way. That's what really this meaning of, so poverty is not the right translation. That's what I'm trying to basically get across in here. So now the guy is basically explaining to his wife from that perspective. So the wife is now coming to him from perspective of her needs, right? And her material needs, in a sense that I need this, we're always hungry. We don't have something to actually, sleep in. And we are just that poor. And the husband is coming from the spiritual sense and trying to tell her, hey, stay spiritual, be content with what God gives you, and so forth. Let's see what he said. So why keep on seeking wealth? Her husband said. Most of our life has passed. We'll soon be dead. So why do we even worry about this? The wise don't think of gain and loss like you, for both are like a flood that passes through. Whether it's clean or foul, don't waste a breath. Within a moment, it will meet its death. And it's not necessarily the death that it's supposed to meet. Sorry, I gotta just make sure that I have the so it's not that it's meeting its death. It's the fact that, again, it's not a good translation in this case. What he's saying, that whatever it is, it's just not. It doesn't. It's not forever. It would perish. Okay, it would eventually change form, or it would eventually, but it's not the death that it's going to meet. Thousands of animals live wild and free without such ups and downs so joyfully. The dove gives thanks to God from that tall tree. Although for food there is no guarantee. The nightingale sings praise of God as well. We count on you and you respond so well. The falcon finds her bliss on the king's hand, forgetting all the carrion in the sand. From gnats to elephants, the same applies. They're all God's family whom he supplies. So basically, he's trying to remind the wife that God has got an abundant vision towards, his creatures, and they're always supplied with what they need. So why are you worried about all of this? Okay. Then the grief inside our breasts is worthless nonsense. And this is supposed to be heart, not breasts. The grief inside our hearts is worthless nonsense. mere fog and dust of our wind-like existence. Uprooting griefs are scythe which wickedly keep whispering, "It's like this, can't you see?" So basically, he's saying that if you keep on, bringing this type of conversation, it's not going to be helpful. So use a, scythe or use a knife or something and uproot these stuff from your heart, because it's always these are obstacles in the form of, in the way of you getting what you need, or in the way of getting the gifts that God has been granting us on a daily basis. So uprooting grief, our sight which wickedly keep whispering, "It's like this, can't you see?" Each suffering is a piece of death, no doubt, if you know how to cast that portion out. So it's like every time you worry about something, every time you're suffering, it's actually getting you closer to, your death in a sense. And in this case, what he's trying to say is that every time you worry about something, it makes your death harder. So try to get rid of it as much as possible. Since you can't flee that part of death, heed well, all of it will be poured on you in hell. If this part of death tastes sweet to you, God will make all the rest of it sweet too. So he's like, as are not, if you're not as content with what God gives you here, and if you're complaining about some of the hardships that you're getting now, that's a mistake, because you have to look at them and uh, invite them and be with them from a sweet perspective, and just be content that whatever God gives you, whether it's pleasure or pain, is for your own good. So for those who actually look at this from a pleasure perspective, or from a perspective of God's gift, he's saying that the death that they would face eventually is going to be sweet as well. Pains are like messengers from death. Don't shun death messenger, you weak, distracted one. So it's like every time that you hear, uh, if you feel pain, it gives you a message of death, and try not to shun away from it. You have to accept it. You have to be be okay with it, and just embrace it as it comes to you. Those who live now in pleasure die in pain. The body's worshipers, no soul will gain. So what he's saying is that if you live a life of pleasure, and in this case, the pleasure that he's talking about is the earthly pleasure. If you live a life of pleasure, your death is going to be in pain. And the body, again, it's the body that basically takes all of that and infects the soul, which eventually, when the soul is about to, kind of let go of everything, it just can't, because it's been so accustomed to what the body has been experiencing. From pastures, sheep are driven to their pen. The fattest ones are picked for slaughter then. So now it gives just an example of sheeps, that, the sheeps are always the ones that are fatter. They will always get slaughtered, and picked for slaughter, and that's it. The night has passed and dawn has come, dear wife. Will you just talk of gold for all your life? So now apparently this conversation has taken a long time. He's just saying that, all night you've been talking about this. Is this what you're going to talk about the rest of your life? Are we going to talk about how much we don't have stuff? When you were young, you were more satisfied. Now you see gold, then you were gold inside. Then you were gold inside. So it's like when you were, young, you were not like this. You had gold within you. In this case, it was like he's trying to say that you were more patient with me. Now it looks like, now you're just completely out of control. A fruitful vine once, now you can't be sold. Your fruit should ripen, but you're dry and old. So what he's saying is now he's trying to remind her a few things here. First of all, the fact that, she's not as young as what she used to be, which, if you're talking about, materialistic stuff, every time you're actually, I mean, as you grow older, it's harder for you to enjoy the materials and stick things in life. I mean, you always want to get them when you can actually enjoy them. And in this case, he's basically bringing an example of the fact that you were a fruitful vine, in a sense that you were a grape, in a sense, and you were ready to be used for wine, but now you can't be sold. You're so old, and your fruit should ripen, but you're dry and old. And it's just that you've lost that essence. Your fruit ought to be sweeter now than that, but you have reversed the way. Rope makers play. So rope makers in this case that he's talking about is in the past, when they were trying to create a rope, they would basically take few threads, and they would start woven them together and spin them around and so forth, and they were called rope makers or something like that. And so he's saying that every time that you used, so if, let's say, because this thing kind of wove, they woven the threads around each other, if you had a meter, in order to create a meter of rope, you have to have 2 meters of thread, because as you're actually kind of twist them around each other, it kind of shortens in length. And he's saying that you need to be sweeter now, because now you have completely grown, and you've become a full-fledged fruit, but you have kind of shrunk, because just like the rope makers play. Since you're my wife, we should be similar to make our life together easier. Partners must match in basics. They must share, like gloves and shoes, together as a pair. So now he goes into the fact that, you're my partner, you're my wife, you should be supporting me. Why is it that all of a sudden you're talking about all these stuff? If one shoe of a pair does not quite fit, the other must be thrown away with it. So it's saying that the pairs of shoes that you buy, they have to fit together. If one is larger or smaller than the other one, it's useless, and you have to throw them out. 2 loads won't balance on the camel's back if one's much smaller than the other sack. So now he's uses another example that again, he's talking about the husband and wife, or the yin and yang, in a sense that when you actually are trying to load a camel, if there are 2 sacks, they both have to be weighing equal. Contentment is the aim of my brave soul. So now he's talking about contentment is the aim of my brave soul. Why do you make repulsiveness your goal? So he's like, all I'm trying to do in my life is I'm trying to be content with God, what God has given me. And you are going after, basically punishing me and being mean to me about the way that I have chosen. The man spoke with sincerity this way to his old wife until the break of day. So he talked about all these stuff until break of day or the morning.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I have a kind of little problem with the line that it says the person who have pleasure in life is going to have painful deaths. And knowing Rumi, that he's always concentrating on being happy and being the moment, why this statement comes from him?
So that's a good question. So the pleasure that he's talking about is the pleasure from within. I'm sorry, the pleasure that's outside. I mean, the life. Like, for instance, the pleasures of life. Let's just put it this way. For instance, people are addicted to eating steak. That's a pleasure of life. Eating steak, after a while, for you, it's extremely, it may not be as as healthy because of the condition of your body. But what you do is you start taking pills so you would balance your body in order to actually have that stick. So that's a pleasure of life that you can't let go. And then this pleasure of life eventually starts failing certain organs. And you then start, attaching your body to other types of, equipment in order to still sustain that pleasure of life. That's the pleasure that he's talking about. The inner pleasure is the pleasure of soul. Rumi, when he's talking about the pleasure that, be happy, he wants us to be happy from within. He doesn't want us to be happy. He always, if you remember, he always talks about the type of drunkenness that would last forever. He never likes anything that doesn't last long. So he always advises us to be happy, of course, and be joyful, of course. But all of this joyfulness and happiness is something that comes from within, and it's coming from the heart, and it's something that we can sustain. It does not have to have any sort of outside merits affecting it. No matter what happens outside of you, you're always happy. No matter what is going on outside, you're always content. You're always in pleasure. You're always happy. And all that's what Rumi actually wants us to be at.
Okay, thank you.
Great. You're welcome. So the wife advises her husband, don't talk anymore about your own merit and spiritual station. Why preach what you don't practice? For even though these words are true, still you haven't reached the station of trusting God, and to speak like this above your own station and affairs is harmful and more abhorred by God. Now, what does this really mean? The station that he's talking about, do you remember the example that we gave, that it's two separate type of condition that Rumi talks about? One is the way you feel, and another one is the place that you are. And he gave us an example about the fact that everybody is invited to the wedding, but there's only one person who can go inside the room with the bride. And everyone who was invited to the wedding were the ones that felt good, but the one that actually got to go with the bride is the guy that is in the right place. This station is referring to the place of you, where you are. And in Farsi, the word is maqam. So basically, so it was hal va maqam. That's what we were talking about at that time. So she is saying that where you think you are, you're not there. So don't talk about it. Basically, she's and of course, she's pissed off. So obviously, that's another thing. So his wife screamed, image is what you adore. I won't endure your stories anymore. So it's like, all you're saying is an image. There's no sense behind this. And I'm not going to accept this anymore. Don't spout pretentious gibberish to me. Don't speak with arrogance presumptuously. You have such airs as if you have earned much fame. Look at your own state now and feel some shame. So, yeah, she's not holding back anything. So pride's ugly, and for beggars doubly so, like wearing wet clothes when it bounces to snow. So he's like, you're right now completely talking from your pride. You think you are what you're saying you are, but you're not. And she gives an example that it's like, it's snowing out there and you wear wet clothes. It's basically, it makes your suffering double. Although you like to show off with hot air, your home's spider web, it's hardly there. So he's saying that what you're just saying basically is it's just fluff. And what you are telling me that you have, I know you don't have it. It's like just a spider web, which is hardly even holding up. When did you fill your soul with satisfaction? You've only just looked up its definition. So it's like you only know what it means. You don't know truly what it means. So that's why she's referring to the soul. If you knew that how to be satisfied within the soul, that's a different understanding than when you actually just know a definition. So right now, for instance, I think all of us are understanding a definition of what it means to be content. Rumi is giving us that definition. Once we exercise what he gives us, if we exercise what he tells us, if we exercise what he tells us, that is the only time that we have truly known what it really means to be, for instance, content. Other than that, we're just reading theories right now. And that's what the wife is also saying. So he says, when did you fill your soul with satisfaction? You've only just looked up its definition. Although the prophet said contentment's treasure, you can't tell it from pain, though it brings pleasure. So it's like, although, so she's referring to, a hadith from the prophet that contentment, or in this case, being content with what you have, is a treasure. And he's saying, and she's just saying that you only know this. You just know this because of its definition. You don't know the true statement of it. Contentment is the spirit's treasure chest, but only grief is found inside your breast. And again, this is not breast, this is heart. He needs to change this. So, but only grief is found inside your breast. Don't call me wife or try to cuddle me. My husband's justice, not depravity. Depravity or something. Yeah, depravity. So basically now she's like, don't, just like movies here. I mean, apparently this was like back then as well. She says, don't touch me or don't come close to me and all that. And basically, yeah, but don't try to get close to me. How can you walk with lords when you eat mud? And if for your drink you suck a locust's blood? She's being very vicious to him. Locust, thank you. So she's like not being kind at all. I mean,
they're really going at it right now.
Oh, she's pissed. Yeah. You fight with dogs for bones. You're so in need. And mourn just like an empty-bellied reed. I mean, so don't look at me with eyes full of disdain, or I'll tell you what you hide inside each vein. I mean, yeah, she's like, don't try to fool me. You think you're more intelligent than me. You have credited me with stupidity. Don't jump on me like reckless wolves, would you? Better to lack a brain than be like you. Oh boy. Yeah. Because your brain just shackles everyone. It seems more like a snake or a scorpion. May God oppose your lies and cruelty and stop your meddling brain from touching me. Both snake and charmer lurk behind your face. You're both amazingly, you are a disgrace. If you could see, you're ugly like a crow. From pain and grief, you melt just like a snow. Oh, geez. The charmer chants spells like an enemy. The snake casts spells back through, though he cannot see. If his trap for the snake were not a spell, how could he be the snake's prey then as well? The charmer, counting all the wealth he'd made, can recognize the spell from his own snake. The snake says, charmer, you think you're so fine. You see your own spell, but now look at mine. So she is now comparing it, Jesus. She's comparing it to a snake and the charmer of the snake. And she's saying that the charmer is trying to amaze people with something that's, I mean, a snake is a symbol of evil at the moment. And he's saying that the charmer is trying to, seduce people with an evil. And as this evil does what the charmer thinks that he's doing, and the charmer goes and collects his money, as he's counting the money, the evil actually gets back at him while he is not looking. And so eventually it's something that it would grab a hold of his, his destiny as well. So it says, the snake says, charmer, you think you're so fine, you see your own spell, but now look at mine. You trick me with the name of God for fun to make me seem possessed to everyone. I wasn't trapped by your trick. So now she's actually going after the husband with another attack, that you have tricked me with the name of God all my life. And I basically, and you have basically, if I didn't necessarily obey you, or I didn't do what you wanted me to do, then you told everyone that I was possessed. I was, somehow possessed with evil. I wasn't trapped by your tricks, but God's name. You've made God's name a trap. You should feel shame. The name of God will make you pay for it. To his name, soul and body I commit. For it will slit the vein of your sad life, or throw you into gaol like me, your wife. The wife gave lectures to him of his sort, just like a never-ending bad report. There you go. So just real quick, this last 4 lines, quickly, what is it that is referring to in here when he's talking about, you tricked me with the name of God for fun to make me seem possessed to everyone?
He's talking about nowadays clergy, that they try to guide you, but they don't believe it themselves.
Yes, very nice, very good. Yeah, it's basically that. It's we are possessed.
Do we have any of those?
Yeah. I mean, basically that's right. I mean, he's what she is, he's referring to in here is that, the name of God at the end of the day, it's whatever we are told to do in the name of God by, the religious clergy and people who preach, but they don't even believe in what they're preaching themselves. And right now, Rumi is basically attacking them in a way. That's why he says, the name of God will make you pay for it. To his name, soul and body I commit. So he's saying that eventually the name of God that they kept using on everyone, it eventually is something that's going to, get them to pay for this. And they had to, again, they have to suffer that consequence. All right. So here, well, the wife then answers, and now it's the husband's turn. He obviously is not backing down. He's going to answer her back. So he said, so the man advises his wife, don't look upon the poor with contempt, but look at the work of God as perfect. Don't reveal the poor with their poverty through your own vain fancy and opinion. Okay. So in this case, again, he still categorizes himself as the content soul. and telling his wife that, hey, don't be judging me because of what you see. Your judgment is not correct. Okay. So he said, are you a wife? You always moan. Poverty's pride, so leave my ears alone. So again, he's referring to this statement from the prophet. And again, it's not poverty, and I'm trying to find the right word for it. If you guys have a suggestion for the word, let me know. But the word faqr is, or you know, the direct translation is poverty, but that's not what we're talking about here. So anyways, he is basically saying that
So that faqr is not poverty from material things, it's poverty from spiritual things.
no. So it's actually the opposite of what we believe is poverty. Okay. So the faqr is the fact that, you know, so the faqir in Farsi is somebody who just doesn't has very little material stuff. Okay. So when somebody says I am faqir, that means that I don't have much. Okay. Now, just like how in we've talked about numbers at some point, we said 1 in the number system is the smallest number, but in the spiritual sense, 1 is the biggest number. So faqr is actually the same thing. It has an opposite meaning when it comes down to spirituality. It's complete contentment and complete surrender into God.
Or completely being zero on yourself, not
Yeah,
being
I mean,
existence on yourself. Maniyat as being very
right.
separated.
So basically what he's talking about from a faqr perspective here is complete surrender and completely let go of everything and be completely on a flowing you know, essence with, you know, the ups and downs of what comes his way. So then that's why, again, you know, he was using Prophet Muhammad's words that poverty is pride, so leave my ears alone. Wealth is just like a hat that people wear to warm their heads if they have lost their hair. So now he's saying that wealth is something that people hide behind. But those with lovely, glossy curls prefer not to wear hats without they're happier. And now he's comparing this. He's like, you know, those who actually do have, you know, hair, you know, they don't want to wear a hat because they want to always be able to show that off and so on and so forth. The man of God is like the eye, and sight is better than to be veiled from God's light. Now, again, he's now trying to give a little bit more meaning behind this, that
Mohsen,
vale.
sorry to interrupt. This hadith that they is referring to Prophet Muhammad, it's a very short sentence. It says, Al-faqru fakhri wa bihi aftakhar. It means that I'm very proud of my faqr, whatever you describe that faqr, that I don't, my needing, in other words, get into a place where I only need God. I don't need anything else. I'm proud of that stage.
Right. And again, it's the contentment that you know, they're talking about, whatever they're content with. So in this case, and he says the man of God is like the eye and sight. So now he's talking about a man of God is someone who has the eye and he has the sight as well. So you never want to basically cover your sights. Is better than to be veiled from God's light. In this case, he's saying that if you have the sight and you have the eye, don't cover it, and allow the light to come your way. The dealer at the time of inspection strips slaves of clothes that might hide imperfection. So he's saying, now he's referring to other things. He's basically trying to say that I am still the content man, and I'm proud of it, and I have nothing to hide. This is what I am outside and inside. That's what the man is trying to basically prevent, message to his wife. So he says the dealer at the time of inspection strips slaves of clothes that might hide imperfection. At the time of Rumi, slaves were being traded, and that's true. They would actually, take off their clothes so that they could, people who were buying them, they would inspect them just like any merchandise. But he can't strip them of their blemishes. He'll clothe them so that no one witnesses. So if one of them have got something that is not necessarily pretty to be seen by others, he would, the guy who is the dealer would, try to clothe them so that they would not find out at the time of inspection, claiming this one's just shy through modesty. If I undress him, he's bound to flee. So basically he would bring an excuse that, this one is just a shy slave and he would not want to be, naked in front of others and so forth. Up to his neck, the dealer is filled with vice. To cover this, his money pays the price. But he's saying that, of course, the dealer knows the truth about what he's offering as a merchant, to his customers and all that. The slave of lust can't see his faults within, for lust unites hearts which are filled with sin. So now in this case, just to make sure I'm actually saying this correct. So this is a bad translation. Yeah. So what he's saying here is that the slave of lust can't see his faults within. I can't understand why he's saying this. Okay, let's go back here. So again, bad. So this line refers to the line before. So in here it says, up to his neck, the dealer's filled with vice. To cover this, his money pays the price. And what he's trying, excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. So what he's saying here is that somebody who has money, in order for them to cover their shortcomings, what they do is they spend money. So if they have shortcomings in certain subject, or if they have shortcomings in certain, conversation and all that, the way they cover that is by spending more money. So their money does the work for them. And their money protects them from people finding out that how, for instance, how, uneducated the guy is, or how, and it's true these days, if somebody comes to especially here in Los Angeles, you see this. Somebody comes to a party with a Rolls Royce and a chauffeur opens up the door, people would think twice about approaching him and think twice about asking him specific questions about his business. Why? Because that image is protecting him from others trying to find out who he is. Okay, and this is exactly what the line is. So up to his neck, the dealer is filled with vice. To cover this, his money pays the price. Now he says the slaves of lust can't see his fault within. Now in this case, he's saying whoever is lust in what he sees. So let's say in that party again, that person comes in a Rolls Royce, and people are all like, "Oh my God, what a car!" And they're completely lost into what they have seen. They can't see that guy's fault. They just can't see it. For lust unites hearts which are filled with sin. And they all of a sudden find themselves in the same place, and they have the same conversation. They gather around, they're like, "Oh, did you see him? Did you see how he came in? Did you see that, so and so opened his door? Did you see his car? Did you see his suit?" Things like that. But if a beggar utters the words of gold, now let's say in that same party, a beggar comes and says, "I have gold." His wares still won't be put on shop and sold. And in this case, what happens is that nobody really looks at him. And what he claims is nothing that people would come and try to buy or trade it or even express any sort of interest for it. Why? Because people are commanded by what they see, and their sight is basically telling them, how things are happening around them. The Sufis' business is beyond your brain. Don't treat their poverty with such disdain. Now, in this case, he's now talking about the business of the Sufis in this case. And if you, we're going to get the definition of Sufis in a few weeks as we go through a story, which is a story between people from Rome and people from China. Rumi has a story about that. And he gives a definition of who Sufis are. But in this case, he's talking about people who are content. And he says the Sufis' business is beyond your brain. Don't treat their poverty with such disdain. So it's like, don't look at them that they don't have anything to offer, or they are, they look poor. Don't judge them on that. For they transcend mere outward poverty. Their daily bread comes from God's majesty. So it's saying that, hey, in this case, their poverty is something that comes from God's, greatness. I'm sorry, their daily bread. I mean, as if they look to you that they have nothing to actually spare, and they look weak, but it's God who's actually given what they need in order to live, and they're content with that. But since God is just, how can he mistreat lovers whose hearts for him alone still beat? And now in this case, he's saying that you have to just know this, that God is just, and whatever he does to people, especially those who have complete lust in him through their heart, he would never treat them bad, or give some people all they desire while ushering the rest straight for the fire. It's like, you think that, you think that, in this case, this is again a bad translation about fire in here. Saying that, and this is something that we see, and at times I've had these questions sometimes in the other classes that I've taught, that somebody asks me, okay, so where is God's justice? Why is it that, for instance, I was born in this part of the world and I had everything that I needed, but somebody, let's say in somewhere in some village in Africa, is born with poverty and malnourishment and AIDS? So where is God's justice into that? And this is exactly what Rumi is talking about in here. He says, so you think that he gives some people all they desire while ushering the rest straight to fire. And in this case, the fire is the fire of refraining from, going for the enjoyable stuff in life, or the things that, that gives you temporary enjoyment. That's what this fire is, not fire of hell or anything like that. So let me do this again. So may his fire burn those who hold that view, for he create earth and heavens too. Now he's saying that, this fire that you think that, he has created, if basically Rumi is saying that if you think that God is not just, I hope that his fire actually burns the people who feel that way, that God is not just, because he is the creator of heavens and earth. Was poverty my pride then said in vain? No, there are hidden glories to attain. So now he's going back to that, saying of the prophet, that was this just said in vain? Was it just something that was said? He's saying, no, it's there are hidden glories to attain. In anger, you have sworn at me a lot. Now the husband is saying this, that you've been angry and you have basically cussed at me and swore at me. Snake charmer, you have called me, though I'm not. If I catch one, first I'll pull his fangs out, so that's safe to bash its head about. Now that's what the husband is saying, that, if I find, if I find a snake, the first thing I do is I'll take his fangs out. And the reason he's saying that is because the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever is charming others is not able to hurt anyone. And then, of course, he's saying that, I would then bash his brain. If I catch one, first I'll pull his fangs out. So that's that it's safe to bash its head about, because those fangs are its own enemy. I'll pull them out with knowledge God gave me. Now, I have a question as far as, what does the fangs of snake resemble in here? And why is it that, before just, just taking a stone and bashing the, head of a snake out, why is it that he wants to pull the fang out first? Why does he have to go through that?
I think the way that I read this, that he's actually trying to be kind to the snake by taking his fang out, because once you take the fang out of the snake is no longer dangerous. So snake is not in a danger of being killed by others now, because they don't consider it dangerous.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well,
is Rumi doing this?
somehow or another, he's trying to convey to his wife that what he sees in him is not really what he is, that she needs to get, I don't know.
No, don't go. Hold on. Yeah. Think about Rumi and how Rumi is looking at life. And what he's saying is that, okay, you have called me a snake charmer. In anger, you have sworn at me a lot. Snake charmer, you have called me, though I'm not. This statement, do you think this is at the guy? Let me ask you guys this: have you guys read the defense of Socrates when he defends himself in the court?
Mm-mm.
Who?
Socrates. Socrates.
Oh, no.
So Socrates, at the time, he was jailed for during the time that he was in that time of Greek dynasty, and during that time they jailed him and they gave him a title of snake charmer, and they told him that you gather all the youth people around yourself and you are teaching them things that are harmful to them. And Socrates was actually a very wise and spiritual man, because when you read his defense, in there he talks about death, and he talks about the fact that, he actually very openly tells them that you guys are going to sentence me to death, and you think that this thing is going to scare me, but I'm actually happy that you're doing that, because when you do that, I will get to carry on my journey in a different life. So that's what Socrates had said. In here, when Rumi is talking about snake charmer, that is also something that Rumi has been, in certain elements have been called, or they have called Shams a snake charmer. That you have been the one who has deceived people by these words or these things that are sometimes against what we believe in. Okay? Now, the snake is us. So what he's saying is that if I catch you, I'll first pull the fangs out. Why? Because you are hurting others with your fangs. So what I'll do is I'll try to put you in a position that you can't hurt anyone else. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make sure that you start looking within you rather than looking at others. The second line, so that's safe to bash its head about, is not really a true, is not the right word, because I don't think if the translation is right, because in the Farsi thing it says sarkuftan, which basically is not necessarily killing it. It's basically trying to suppress it. So what he's saying is that, I've been called the charmer. You're the snake. What I'll do is I'll pull your fangs out so that you can't hurt anyone else and yourself. Because those fangs are its own enemy. And that's what it says in the next line. Because those fangs are its own enemy. I'll pull them out with knowledge God gave me. So the way I pull them out is that I will use the knowledge that God has given me, because that way I can, help you reflect on what God has given you. Does that make sense? I don't chant spells for my own benefit. I've turned desire around and shackled it. Of this world, God knows I don't seek a part. Contentment's brought a new world to my heart. Upon the pear tree, you see things pear-shaped. Those who come down from such vile thoughts escaped. You feel so giddy when you spin and whirl. You see the house spin, but it's you, my girl. Now, it says, he's talking about, the pear tree. So I have to explain this to you guys so this actually makes sense of what he's talking about the pear tree. In here so far, what he has basically said is that I'll make sure that, you cannot hurt yourself and anyone else. That's what I will make sure that happens to you. But what he's saying is that you can't see well. He basically comes back and says, of this world, God knows I don't seek a part. Contentment brought a new world to my heart. Basically saying that everything else to others is what they see and what they see with their eyesight. Now, the story of the pear tree is a story that we're going to read in book 4, I think. But he's brought it here. And the story is like this, that apparently a husband was told that his wife is about to cheat on him. And he goes home to basically confront the wife. Once he gets home, the wife, sends the other man somewhere else and goes upon a tree. And from the tree, she looks at him, from a tree that is a pear tree. She looks at the husband and tells him that, what are you doing? And who is that person with you? And the husband is like, what are you talking about? He says, oh, don't lie to me. I can see it from here. Somebody is there with you. He's like, no, there's no way that there's somebody with me. You're crazy. You're mad. Come down and look for yourself. And she's like, no, I can see her. She's right there. She's right there with you. She's basically, doing the nasty, blah, blah, blah. And the husband gets really pissed off and says, you know what? You don't see well from there. Why don't you come down? And she's like, why don't you come up here and look for yourself? I'm going to come down here. From here, I can see everything. So the husband goes up on the tree. The wife comes down, then calls the man that had, went into hiding. And then the husband is up there and sees that, she's with a guy. And then the husband is like, oh my God, this is probably right. Upon here from this tree, I can see this. And, but this must not be true because it wasn't true for me. So he couldn't trust his eyesight anymore either. So Martin got the joke. I don't think if Russell got it.
You disappeared voice-wise 15 seconds. I didn't hear a thing you say.
Sorry.
No, I got it. It was funny.
I'm sorry, Rasul. How far did you get?
There was no audio coming from you.
Okay, so the wife, you got the fact that the wife is about to cheat on her husband, right?
I got that part, yeah.
So the husband comes home, the wife sends him up to the top of the tree. I'm sorry, the wife goes on top of the tree. The husband is like, where are you going there? She's like, I want to look at everything. And she goes, who is that person with you? Who's that woman? And the husband is like, there's nobody here with me. He's like, no, I can see it. Somebody's right there with you. And he's saying, no, there's no one in here. And she's like, you know what? If you're calling me a liar, why don't you come up here and look? And, you'll see that there is a woman, there's somebody else there, or there's a woman there. So the guy goes up the tree, the wife goes down, and the wife calls the other man. Now, they're now doing whatever they're doing. The husband's looking and he goes, oh my God, from up here, I can see that there are two, but this must be wrong because I was the only one that was down there. So she saw two people. Now I'm seeing two people. So basically, he's deceived by his wife. Anyhow, that's what the pear tree is. So he says, upon the pear tree, you see things pear-shaped. For those who come down from such veiled thoughts escaped. So you have to come down the pear tree and look at things up close and see them for yourself. So you feel so giddy when you spin and whirl. So he also gives you another example that when you actually, spin around yourself, if you stop after a few minutes, the house starts, keeps turning around you, but it's not the house. House is not turning. It's just that you're feeling this way. So he's trying to say that your senses can always deceive you about what the truth is.
That's actually a good analogy because it's correct.
Yes. Now, so now he gives another story right in between. That he says an explanation of how everyone's movement proceeds from where he is. He sees everyone from the limited perspective of his own existence. Blue glass shows the sun as blue and red glass as red. When the glass is free of color, it becomes transparent and is more truthful than all other glass as a leader to emulate. So Rumi is now trying to tell us that in our life, we put on glasses And with the glasses that we put on, these glasses have got specific stains or colors on it. And we see things through these lenses and these colors, and our perspective comes from that. So he is referring to a story of Abu Jahl and Prophet Muhammad. So Abu Jahl saw Muhammad once and said, the ugly thing that Hashemites have bred. So you know that Prophet Muhammad was from the Bani Hashem, village. And Abu Jahl is saying that, Bani Hashem have bred a very ugly person. Muhammad said to him, your words are true, although there is none impertinent as you. So he says that, your words are true, but none of them are, in this case, the stuff that you're saying are not really as important, basically. Abu Bakr then exclaimed, my son of light, not from the east nor west may you shine bright. So then, Prophet runs into Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr says that you are the son, and you're the son that has not come from the east or the west. You're always shining bright. Muhammad said, correct, companion. You have fled this world worth less than carrion. And he's saying that, yeah, you're correct. And obviously you have left this earthly world, which is not worth a little fly or something. Those present asked, pure chief of elect, how can two opposites be both correct? So there were people present when Abu Jahl said this statement and when Abu Bakr said this statement. And they're like, well, wait a minute. How come you're saying that both of these are correct? I'm like a mirror of God's clean to perfection. That's what Prophet said. I'm like a mirror, God's clean to perfection. Indians and Turks both see here their reflection. So it's like, I'm the mirror that has been completely cleansed by God, and people see their reflection in me. So when Abu Jahl said that you're the ugliest thing that Bani Hashem has ever produced, that's because he sees himself ugly. And the one that actually sees that, I am the light of the East and the West is because he himself, in this case, referring to Abu Bakr, is the light of the East and the West. The man said, now in this case, the man now goes further to answer, the wife. So the man said, don't see me as covetous. I don't know what covetous is. Transcend this womanish suspiciousness. So basically the man tells him that if you think that I am, if you think that I'm actually somebody who wants more than what he deserves,
greedy,
you're wrong. Exactly. If you think I'm greedy, you're wrong. In this case, transcend this warmish suspiciousness. So this is just something that you're just thinking. It looks like lust, but is in fact God's grace. When there is grace for lust, there is no space. So it's like what it looks like to you is that, it looks like lust to you, but it's God's grace. And when there is grace of God, nothing else can actually even, prevail or show up. Try being poor a day or two, you'll see twice as much richness in this poverty. So in this case, now it's Rumi and saying on behalf of, again, using the character of the man that try to be poor. And in this case, try to be content for a day or two. And you'll see, and this contentment is you surrendering completely. It says for a couple of days, just try this. Try surrendering for a couple of days. Try being poor a day or two. You'll see twice as much richness in this poverty. Have patience with it. Don't grow so uptight. In poverty lies God's most glorious might. Again, these words of poverty all have to be changed, because I don't think poverty is the right word for it. Have patience. It's like whatever comes your way, just have patience with it. Don't grow so uptight. In poverty or in contentment lies God's most glorious might. Avoid being sour, and many souls you'll see through satisfaction drowned in the sweet sea. So he's saying that try not to be sour. And in this case, you will, and the sourness that he's talking about, is saying that when you are sour, you lose your ticket in order to go into the sweet lake. So I don't know if you've ever been to a sweet water, like when you go to Lake Tahoe, that's a sweetwater lake. Or when you go to Lake Washington, this is Sweetwater Lake. It's different feeling when you actually swim. It's a different feeling. I mean, you just don't feel thirsty as much. You can actually stay in the water for longer hours. It's like actually fairly enjoyable. So what he's saying is this: avoid being sour. So in order to be, getting into that sweet sea, and in this case, the sweet sea that he's talking about, the word that Rumi is using is angabin, and angabin is basically some kind of a honey, and that's what he's actually referring to. That then through satisfaction you'll be drowned in honey. Thousands of bitter souls too can be found, like roses which in syrup have been drowned. If only you had the capacity, then my heart state could be shown candidly. So now this is the guy saying that in this case, if you could understand what I could tell you, then you would I would tell you everything that's within my heart. And in this case, if you had the capacity, this is Rumi telling us as well. So it's like, you guys don't have the capacity of hearing what goes in my heart. Milk from the soul's breast is what I now share. It won't flow out if no one suckles there. So he's saying that basically, unless you want it, unless you actually come and desire it and want it from me, my words won't just come out. This milk will not flow for you. When listeners feel a thirst and start to seek, preachers, though they be dead, will start to speak. So in this case, he's saying that, if there are eager listeners for what you have to say, then, the preacher is there to actually talk. When listeners aren't tried, but fresh as dough, the mute find tongues with which to lecture to. So it's like, if listeners are not tired and they're right there and they're listening and all that, if somebody is at him a mute, he can talk. Now, why is he saying this? He's saying this is because he says that you have to want it. You have to desire to hear what is it that I'm actually feeling. What is it that I'm going through? If strangers enter my house, women wear a scarf that can cover all their hair. If relatives should enter in their place, then they would lift their veils back off their face. Whatever people try to beautify, they just embellish for the seeing eye. How can the harp's sweet music that you hear have been made just to please a tone-deaf ear? Now, he says all this stuff, the harp that he's talking about is the music of the universe. And he says, how can the harp's sweet music that you hear have been made just to please the tone-deaf ear? It's like, this sweet music is there. I can hear it. You can't, but you should be hearing it. Because without the music, this world is not there. And as a matter of fact, this is something that, again, when you go into Greek philosophy, they talk about divine melody. Divine melody is a belief that the Greek philosophers had regarding the music of the universe. God didn't make musk fragrant just for fun. It's for those who can smell, not everyone. Now he's coming back and says that God didn't just create a nice fragrance or musk in this case he's talking about. It's something that actually gives you an indication of where you are and who you are close to. God has set up land and sky you view and put for both fire and light between the two. So in this case, he's saying that everything that God has created, the land and the sky, or the earth and the sky, or the or the sky, and put forth fire and light between the two, so you can actually see. The earth is made just for terrestrials. The sky is the home for all celestials. So in this case, he's talking about what the earth is and what the sky is. And believe it or not, this is exactly what we know now, as far as who lives here and who lives there. And believe it or not, he does believe that there are people in the skies that are living there. We haven't discovered anybody from out of other, galaxies or anything like that. But I guarantee you there's going to be contact at one point, and Rumi's words will actually come true. The base man is the loftiest bitter foe, the customer for each place we all know. So in this case, it says that the baseman is not the right translation, but the guy who only sees this earth is the guy who is the baseman, who is the one who only looks down. It says is lofty is bitter, and he cannot understand the guy who is at the loft or up there, and he's always his enemy. The customers for each place we all know. So each of these places, the earth and the sky, has got its own customers. Some people like the earth, some people like the sky, some people like to be buried here, and some people want to elevate there.
Mohsen,
Vale.
couple of replacement for that word poverty. One is destitute. That may convey better than poverty.
Okay, what else? You said
indigence and destitute. Because they both don't refer to material things, that poverty has a connotation that refers to material, not needing materially.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Is that all you? Is that what you've been researching right now?
No. I'm a master of multitasking.
Okay, mashallah. All right. So he says, "Wailed girl." Now, in this case, he's talking to his wife. "Well, girl, he said, have you now lost your mind? Would you put makeup on just for the blind? The world with precious pearls, if I should strew, if they are not your share, what good will it do?" So now he's trying to again tell her that you have a share of what's in this world, and everybody else has a share as well. And that's where, I guess, destitute comes in, or that containment or destitute. So if the world with precious pearls, if I should strew, if they're not your share, what good will it do? No longer fight or try to lead astray, or give me up instead, dear wife, today. So basically now he's threatening her for divorce. He's saying, either you stop fighting me right now, or I'm gonna just completely, let you go. I don't wish to fight with enemies. From righteous actions, even my heart flees. Stay silent, or I'll take this seriously and leave behind our home immediately. Oh my God. And unfortunately, back then, when the husband was threatening the wife that, I would divorce you, of course, that was a pretty serious threat. And, the time, of course, women were not as, independent as now. And of course, this would have been a very, very serious statement. Okay. All right. How are we doing so far?
Very good. Tonight we can follow it much easier.
That's good. Okay. Any questions? Comments?
So the conclusion of this conversation between the husband and the wife is that he's telling the wife that unless you can receive, no matter what I say or do is going to matter.
Say again? I'm sorry.
He's trying to tell his wife that unless you can open up your eyes and ears and your heart, doesn't matter if I bring you any kind of a jewelry, quote unquote, that you won't appreciate it. It's as though I'm beautifying myself for a blind. That unless you have eyes to open up to see.
Okay, let's go back here real quick. I just want to make sure. So would you put makeup on just for the blind? Okay. Let me ask you a question. What do these two characters resemble, the husband and the wife? Is it really a husband and a wife that are talking here?
More than likely not.
Of course. But what?
Heart, soul, ego.
I'm sorry?
One's the ego, and one's the soul. One's the nafs.
Okay. Which is which?
I guess the woman must be the well.
Woman is the ego.
Yeah. Oh, I think everyone froze.
No, we're here.
Okay.
I was just looking at. I'm looking at your picture because I'm trying to read your. You read your body language. Okay. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, you're right. It's the ego and the heart, or it's ego and the soul. If you want to say that, it actually makes better sense. But what are they telling each other here? What is the ego saying?
Ego's looking at the, like their financial, like what's happening in the world, and not being happy with.
But ego has been living with him for a while. And ego is basically saying that, you have really given me a very, very serious, long time of, what do you call it? You have pushed me, you have given me a lot of, you have asked me to be content about things. You have asked me to refrain from wanting more for all this time. It's a long time. He's old, or she is old. Let's put it this way. He's referring to her as old.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the ego is now saying that you have put me through all of this, exercises and everything. And now what? Right?
Ego's being impatient.
Ego is being impatient, but the ego is bringing up some points, right? The ego is trying to say, okay, all this time you made me, you told me not to eat as much. You told me to refrain from wanting more. You told me to refrain from, such and such enjoyable thing in life. You told me not to do all of these things. You put me in all these fires. That's what he referred to. But now what? Where are you at? And the heart, and the soul is saying that I'm all content about everything. I'm all content, and you should be the same way. But somehow they have a yin and yang together. There is a relationship here. It's a relationship.
But if we believe that the ego here is at that we're talking about, then what's the concept of divorcing your ego?
I completely will let go of you. I would completely withdraw from anything that you want.
So in other words, is this a conversation about transitioning from one stage of ego into the next? Like the 3 stages of ego that we have,
You remembered, right?
Yes.
So I think the ego is now saying, when are you going to transition?
Right. So this is the transition.
When are you going to transition? You have told me to do all this stuff and I did it. Well, when are you going to transition? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see.
I mean, there's a yin and yang, but this is not a mutual, like a symbiotic kind of. It's like the ego needs to be dragged, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, ego is getting dragged. You're right. But ego is being dragged at the same time, being very, mindful of the soul as well in this case. But it's saying that, hey, when are we going to get into the next level? I'm now getting a little impatient here.
I mean, if the soul were to separate from the ego,
Then that means that it's the end of it. It's the end of everything.
that's just the end of it.
I mean, that's death, basically, and elevating into the next life. But he's saying that I want to experience this here. I want to experience it now. Okay. All right. I want to stop here, if you don't mind.
That's a good idea.
And the only reason is this is where we wanted to be. Right after this, the wife takes notice of her husband and seeks forgiveness. So the ego, just like exactly what Metin just said, is wanting more, but at the same time doesn't want a divorce, wants to stay, wants a certain, and as Rasul also, alluded to, and rightfully so, wants to go to the next level, wants to experience that. So now they have talked to each other. They have said everything that they wanted to say. Again, if you remember, it was a charmer, the snake charmer, that the ego was calling the soul, that you keep promising me this and that, and I'm not getting any of this and that, and all that stuff. So now, eventually, it looks like she's gonna perhaps, be a little bit more tolerant, and we'll see. We'll get to that one next week, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Anyhow, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. It was very nice.
Last couple of weeks, it was a little out of my hand. Well, one of them was because of the new year, but one of them was completely out of my hand. So we'll see you, inshallah, next week.
Inshallah. Have a good evening, everybody.